So I want to talk about the 10 ways game writing is different. And so let's start with whodunit. What do you mean by that?
I don't remember what I meant by that. Oh, yes. So especially with a lot of other forms, I'm going to pick on film just because
Bring it on.
there's this image of you slave away on your film script all by yourself, somewhere poetic, like an attic somewhere, and you type it out.
Cabin in the woods.
Yes, hopefully without the serial killer coming to get you. But it's
or the zombies.
The whole solitary experience of the writer and his creation, and that's like the traditional view of a writer. And in video games, you got to toss that out the window and get over yourself. Because it's not just your story. You are there to help tell another person's story most of the time. Or even if it's your story and you get to come in and say, hey, here's the story and I'm writing the dialogue and I'm the lead writer. Even if it's your story, you're helping to build an experience. It's not just you. It is a whole team of artists and designers and writers and producers, and you've got to get everybody on board. So this does come back, we were saying earlier, oh, you've got to be a cheerleader. You definitely have to be a cheerleader. And you have to be a team player, and you have to be collaborative, and you have to be really open to other people's ideas, making your ideas better.
Which brings us to number 2 on the list, narrative. The narrative is done by the writer when you're writing a script, but it's pretty much developed via the game when you arrive,
you kind of,
correct?
Well, the video game concept never starts with the writer. It never, ever starts with the writer. So it's never a writer saying, I have this great idea for a video game, let's make it. It's always somebody says, we need to make a game that competes with that game, and let's find the elements of that game that make it fun. Oh, they're doing parkour, we're going to do that. Or whatever, 3 or 4 elements that some suit, oh, my nephew really likes this game, so let's make one like that.
Well, I believe Hollywood is also driven by the market, and
Yes.
especially by the studio system, and especially by comic books
Yeah,
and all these things
absolutely.
that are going on. So it's the same in gaming, you're saying?
It is very much the same, and it's also a fact that everybody who is on the team feels like they have the best game inside them. And they may or may not think about how story fits in this awesome game idea they have, but everybody there thinks they have a great idea for a video game, and they're just waiting for their chance to make it.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the list and ask a couple different questions. What drives video games? Because in film, we say it's story, but I would argue that there's a lot of marketing behind the choices of what's being done.
Yeah.
So it's still in games that marketing is driving the business currently.
Yes.
Is story becoming more important, less important, equally important as they try to reach bigger and bigger audiences and expand the experience?
Yeah, story is becoming more important, but that's a little bit like saying nuts are becoming more a part of brownies.
Mm-hmm.
It's, not necessarily the most important thing going into a video game. A lot of the time, if you ever want to make your game team that you're working with, if you ever want to make them mad at you, you say something about how the story is what drives people through this experience. Because that will instantly make them hate you, because they say gameplay is everything.
Right, which leads me into the next thing. We have a lot of writers here, and the writers are wondering how they turn their game idea into an actual game. And what you're saying is it begins with game development, pretty much.
Yeah, usually, like I was brought in at the very beginning of the last big project I did. I was brought in really early on, and yet all of the characters had been defined already. There was art for all of them. The setting was defined. They knew it was going to be a detective series. They just needed me to fill in the rest. So they've thought of it as bringing me in early because the game hadn't actually been made yet, and I got to help. Like, this is how the story will be told, and this is the story that's going to be told. But these things that we as storytellers think of as fundamental to the story, the setting, the characters, the basic plot idea, was already come up with and settled mostly by a couple of people, the creative director, the studio owner. I mean, it's a different person in every studio that really is the driving force behind these things, but it's almost never a writer.
So if I'm a young writing student going to school to learn game writing, and I've got a game I want to create, one of the things I always get as the screenwriting teacher is, can I use my video game idea and write that as a movie in this class? And I say, you can, but I'm not sure what good it's going to do you. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree with that.
So what advice would you give them then as to how would you ever get your own video game ever produced? What path would lead you there? Because that's one of the biggest questions we get asked.
And it's the answer I have is one that nobody's going to like, which is nobody likes this answer, but it's the truth. The answer is go make your freaking game because nobody's stopping you. Now, when this is said, the budding game writer always says, I'm not a programmer, I'm not an artist. What do you mean go make my game? My game is epic. That's nice. Go make your freaking game.
Because that's the only way it will
That's
ever get made.
That's the only way it'll ever get made. And there are lots of people who have big ideas for movies, but if they go and make it as a comic book first, it's a lot more likely to get made into a movie.
True.
So even though you may have a great story that you think will make a great video game in 3D graphics with fantastic art and amazing gameplay, there are other kinds of games that you can make today that don't require programmers or artists and only require you to learn some software. So there are 4 or 5. One is, I mean, they have really inventive names like Game Maker and Game Salad, and Unity is kind of extra step there if you want to if you really want to get serious about it, you do learn Unity. But there are even way easier ones, like Twine is currently quite popular, and Inklewriter. And these allow you to tell interactive stories using just text and pictures. And that is a game right there. As long as there are choices that you're asking your players to make, and you think of them as players instead of readers, you're giving them some choices to make and a place to go and interacting with it, then it's a game. And you can tell a little bit of your story, or you can tell all of your story as this kind of a game, or you can tell it, a side story, and then someone will play that game and go, hey, that's really interesting. We should make could we convert that into a bigger story? Or that's the only way you're ever going to do it, is to start making your freaking game.
So I want to flip the coin on that question and ask you it from the reverse side. You're arriving as the writer, the setting, everything's been done, even the artwork, the characters. How do you get that job then? Would that be the job to get your game made? Or is that a whole different set of skills and a different thing? Is it ultimately you want to be the head of the studio? I mean, how would you get your game made? If we were to say, like, what career path would I take to get my game made? What would you say?
The person who, and titles are not at all like standardized in the game industry the way they are in film and some other things. So titles are whatever all over the place. But generally, a title that you want to aim for is creative director. But that path comes either, you could be an artist and become the creative director.
Do you need to know code to do that? Is that where you start?
You could be a programmer and get that. It's usually designers. And designers are the people, if you think of them like the architect who makes a house. In video games, they think of writers as the painters who come in and make it pretty, and the decorators who put the furniture in. and the designers are the people who, do
Build the structure of the house.
or put the blueprints out so that the programmers, who are the bricklayers, can go and put it together.
That's a good analogy. Walk me through that from beginning.
Okay, so a game designer is the person who comes up with, like, what is the player going to do? That's the two things that we, over in the game design program, but when I sit around and talk with game designers, they talk about two things that the designer does. They first think about what is the player going to do and what do you want the player to feel. And that's where they begin their project. What are they going to do and what do you want them to feel? And doing is like, all right, is this going to be a shooting game or is this going to be a collecting game? Is this going to be a match 3 game or is this going to be a hidden object game?
We would say genre in film, but similar kind of what kind of task
Yeah,
oriented.
it's absolutely like what action is going to be the core gameplay element. And they usually try to have like 2 or 3, no more than 3, or really core skills that your player is going to be learning and improving. And like that's where they focus their attention on, is making the game fun in a variety of ways. That they spend a lot of time learning psychology and things like that about what kind of dopamine reactors we can get going in your brain to say, yes, I just beat that boss, and they are like, yeah, we need to motivate the player to get there, to want to beat the boss. But that's a different problem. What they are focusing on is, okay, we're going to have a boss here, and we're going to have a boss here, and we're going to have a boss here. It's going to get this sword at that point, and that sword at this point, and then you're going to fight that person, and you're going to get this team member, and then that team member is going to die so that it's more difficult. And you see, they're making story decisions there, like this team member is going to die, but they're doing it so that, you have to learn their skill, and not because it's going to be an emotional impact necessarily.
So game choices drive story decisions.
Yes. And you need to be able to work together with the game designers in a way that your story enhances their gameplay and it works together instead of fighting against each other. So if your story is all about, we talk a lot about theme with game designers, and like getting them to say, okay, the theme of this game is teamwork, or even more than that, like you can't survive without teamwork. And so, okay, I can write a story that's you can't survive without teamwork. But if you just say teamwork, then I can go off on, well, the individuality is what matters in teams, and then that's going to fight against the mechanics that are actually in the game, and it's going to end up feeling like a disjointed experience in the end.
So is this perhaps why the story doesn't come first?
It is usually why the story doesn't come first, because, again, this is a sit-forward experience where the player picks up the controller and wants to be doing things, and there are lots of different ways of motivating a player to do things. You don't want them to set the controller down, or you want them to set it down at a particular time and come back an hour later or whatever. But it's all about controlling your players. The game designer, I know they talk, I'm giving things away here, but game designers are all about controlling the player. And you control players by figuring out what motivates them. And sometimes what motivates them is story. And so that's where the story experts can come in and help you use that motivation. Other kinds of players are more interested in score, or in
how many zombies can I kill?
Yes, like the splatter and joy of just and some are more interested in, like, hey man, my car is way cooler than yours, So there are different things that motivate different players, and story is one of many. And so you're on the team to help with that aspect of it, but it's not the driving force in most games. There are some studios out there who see that see story as a really that's what they want. That's the target audience they're going for. So something like Mass Effect is a series that is really focused on story and motivating the player to take actions based on the story driving you there. But that's a series that hardcore gamers that just want to shoot things don't play, because they know it's from that, and they know it's all about story. Traditional writing, it often starts with a log line or an elevator pitch, whatever you want to say. This is, especially in Hollywood, it was always, oh, this is Ghost meets whatever. I can't even think of another movie. Matrix. Yes, any two things, anyway. It starts with this small idea, and then you write a summary of it, and then you write a script, and act 1, and then, oh yes, you have go ahead and write act 2. Okay, so you write act 2 and 3 and 5. Anyway, it kind of gets bigger and bigger over time, and then you're done. And in video games, you use the same skill sets, but it usually, like, your job as a video game writer usually starts with this huge collection of disjointed pieces. Like I said, somebody's already come up with the characters and the gameplay and the setting, and you have to fit them all together. So oftentimes you're brought in and it's huge already.
So it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and you got to figure out how to put it together.
Yep. And many television shows have like a long, huge Bible.
Yep.
And so one of the things that game writers do also is write Bibles, series Bibles. I've done many of those. And yet, you're the only one that's going to read it, and you're kind of responsible for making sure that the continuity matches throughout the game. So that's your job, because nobody else is going to read that Bible. Because, I mean, I've said that gamers don't read. The people who make games are gamers. And so they don't read this documentation that you're going to be putting together. You're going to do a ton of research to help you. You're going to do a huge Bible to help you as the writer. But to convey it to everybody else, you've got to condense it down into little bits and pieces. A lot of us game writers who, once we get together and start sharing our secrets, we'll write a summary that's half a page or 1 page of the story of the whole game, and we will print it out on pieces of paper and tape it to the mirror in the bathrooms, because otherwise they're never gonna read it. There's no other way. They're not gonna read it. And some people have even gotten clever enough that they'll print out kind of a mini Bible, and they will put that on the back of the toilets in all of the bathrooms. And they will police it to make sure that nobody else puts any other reading material in the bathrooms. So that's the only thing available in the bathrooms. And they'll go through and switch it out. So, okay, you start with the story, and then, 3 weeks later, you'll put something up there that's, hey, this is the main character's backstory in 3 paragraphs, and a picture of him, and some things like that. And some studios will have like fancy posters made up that also help convey what's going on. But it's a strange case of, yes, your information grows bigger and bigger, and then you have to condense it down smaller and smaller so that you can convey it to the team and write the really short dialogue that we've talked about.
Yeah, so it's like doing a character background, a character bio on your character, but you're only going to use a little bit of it in the story. Right?
And then it expands again, where you get 10,000 lines of code or 10,000 lines of dialogue that have to be written. So it does expand again at the end, but usually only if it's actually going to get
Number 4?
The pitch.
The pitch. Sounds exciting.
It does sound exciting, because in traditional forms of entertainment writing, you get to pitch your story idea, and it's either to an agent or a production studio or something, and you're like, hey, I've got this idea. You take them out to lunch and you feed them really well, and you tell them all about your idea. Yeah, that never happens in video games. Number 5 is all about who you know.
So how do you get a job?
Yeah,
you got to be working inside the business.
Yeah, and this is the one place where I'm like, video game writing is so much easier than all these other forms of traditional writing
because it's still such a small industry.
It's a small industry, and it's a very welcoming group right now. People who are interested in video game writing are like, come join us. Let us all work together to make the video game world a more storytelling kind of place. Because we love interactive storytelling. You love interactive storytelling. Maybe you come from a film background. Maybe you come from a novel background. Whatever, we don't care. Let's all work together to make it better. Let's get to know each other. Let's write articles and try to get in conferences where we can tell developers why they should hire us and some things like that. So there are a million different conferences you can go to and go talk to people and find out how, like, what the latest thing is. It's how people are making video games. So you can be up on the lingo and networking with other people who are interested in story. And I mean, the last conference I went to, there was a guy walking around with a big thing on his big sign, basically around his neck, that said, "We are hiring writers."
Wow.
I mean,
where do you see that?
I was going to say screenwriters, film writers never see
never.
that. So this is where it's like, that's we got that one.
He would have been kidnapped at a
I know,
right? Convention. He'd be in the back trunk of my car by now.
Absolutely, yes. So, so we'll have these events where we'll get together at, and we kind of make it public.
So there is hope if you want to be a screenwriter.
There is.
I mean, not a screenwriter, a game writer.
The game writer, there is hope.
So there is hope.
Like, so we'll go to these game developer conventions, and we will put up a sign that says, "Hey, the writers are all going to get together at this time and hang out in the lobby," and we'll get there to network with each other. But then people who want to hire writers will also show up and be like, "Hey, tell me about your work and tell me what you can do."
That sounds great.
I know, it's like amazing.
Like a dream.
From other forms of television, I was just like,
I'm gonna have to check out this thing called game writing.
This happens? I know, right? I know. And so my funniest story to go along with this is that BioWare is one of those companies that really cares about storytelling and really wants people they have a huge writing staff, and they're always looking to hire writers, and yet they have very strict requirements for what you have to do to even get considered, and it's onerous. You have to use their Neverwinter Nights thing and make a mod and use it. I'm just not going to do it because no.
It's too constrictive for you. Maybe.
Well, it's using ancient technology to do something boring, in my opinion. So I was just like, I have better things to do to spend my time. And plus, at the time, they were only hiring for Edmonton, Alberta. And I had no interest in moving to Edmonton, so whatever.
But the question is that something then that still a young, new person wanting to break in the business should be learning?
Absolutely. The reason they do it is a little bit of a gatekeeper. To say, no, you have to learn how to use this piece of software.
So if you're willing to make that commitment, then they see that you're...
So one of their recruiters showed up to our little networking thing for writers and was trying to recruit me, and I had said, I'm not doing your little mod thing, and I'm not moving to Edmonton. And he was like, all right. But I had printed out my list of contacts and places I needed to be and who was going to be where at this conference in an Excel spreadsheet. And as he was talking to other people, I opened up this Excel spreadsheet to look at, where I needed to be next and some things like that. He saw me looking at this Excel spreadsheet, and he walked over and he said, "You don't have to do that little stupid module you don't want to do. I will hire you just because I can see you know how to use Excel."
So Excel is better than knowing Final Draft or Movie Magic Screenwriter, apparently, in the gaming world.
It is. Partly because it makes you think in a more systemic kind of way. It makes you think in discrete lines. It makes you think each line that I write has to have a number associated with it so that when it goes into the recording studio, they can associate that line of dialogue in that number and have it all go into the program all at the same time so that anyway.
So mathematical minds would probably be an asset for
It's
that.
a big asset, and just being comfortable in programs like Excel, granted, this was a while ago, but he was very excited to see a writer who knows how to use Excel. Yeah.
Cool. So what are some of the other differences?
Number 6, and then what happens? Yeah, that's where I go on about linear versus nonlinear, and we talked about that a lot in the dialogue section, so I'm going to skip it. Number 7 is, who am I talking to? When you're writing a film script, you're writing dialogue, which the viewers will actually hear or see that dialogue. And you're also writing like a description for
action lines.
Yeah, and that's for a different audience. Like
that's for the reader in the script, you mean?
That's for eventually somebody's going to sit down and make a budget based on
Correct.
I need to make this, we need to find this location, and we need to find, you know,
your
this
scene headings, your locations, your action lines.
So those are all written for the audience of the people who are going to be making the film.
Right.
While
producer, director, whoever's breaking down the budget.
Yes. Meanwhile, the particular lines of dialogue are written for the end audience.
Correct.
Right? So the game writer has to write for those two same audiences. So I do write dialogue that does end up in the game, people saying it or seeing it on the screen. But I'm also writing for the programmers, so I have to have a description of this character, and you know, it happens with film as well, but it's not just here, makeup lady, make them look this way. I have to make it very expressive and very specific so that the artists who are making this up whole cloth, they're not basing it on somebody who was cast into this character. They are completely building this character by themselves. And so they need as much information as possible. And that's never going to be seen by the player in the end. They'll just see the art.
Right.
So you're communicating with the players, you're communicating with the artists, you're going to be communicating with the programmers in the sense of this is a choice, this is not just a throwaway line of dialogue. I want this to be a choice and this to be a choice. So there's some communication that needs to happen in game documentation that is only aimed at the developers, the programmers. But then you're also going to be writing marketing copy that ends up on the back of the box or on the website or in this, 3 million
This seems
page
to me
wiki.
like this is where I would call this is the game writer's job right here. This to me is the most clear explanation since we've been talking of wrapping up everything into specifically what are the differences in writing for games.
Yeah.
This section here seems to me to be covering that very well.
Well, and I have number 5 is that you also have to talk to the suits, which is the cheerleading that you were talking about before, where you do have to spend a lot of time convincing people that your idea is the way to go. Trust me, it'll work. And sometimes you're having that conversation with the VP of whatever, and they're going, really? Really? Because nobody's done that before. And you're like, yeah, that's why it'll work.
Cool.
So, yeah.
What else you got on that list?
Number 8 is the handoff. This is where I get jealous of film writers, because you write your script, and I know it's a little painful, granted. You write your script, and then you hand it off to the people who are going to make it.
And then they butcher it.
And then
they never let you on the set.
That's right. And
then they hire somebody else to rewrite it.
That's
and
right.
then the actors mess up all the dialogue. What's so great about that to be jealous of?
I know, right? In fact, when I was doing ARGs,
must be really bad in gaming.
I was ending up on the set occasionally doing set visits and things, and they would be like, Wendy, you know how to write stuff. Rewrite this dialogue for me. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, so-and-so is going to hate me because I know who wrote that dialogue and I'm fixing it. Anyway, I never got credited for that, by the way. But
now you sound like a writer.
I know. So what's so great about handing off your baby to somebody else to make it?
Other than the fact that it's been sold and you're probably getting a check.
That's
that might be great.
fantastic.
That is fantastic.
So the difference is that when you're a writer, even if you're a contract writer, you're usually there to the bitter end. Like you are on the set and they want you there as much as possible because at the end of production, there's always going to be crunch time, scramble mode, where all hands on deck. And the more skills you can bring to the table, the better. So one of the things that writers can do is, if you're comfortable with code, one of the worst things that programmers hate to do is find that freaking missing semicolon that is screwing up everything. And writers tend to have really good copywriting skills and copy editing skills if you have developed that as part of your skill set, which you really ought to. And so you're like, hey, tell me what I can help. Everybody's here working till 3 a.m. Put me to work. I can, the dialogue's written, but I can still help you debug code because you're looking for a missing semicolon. I can find a missing semicolon. Just, trust me. And they will let you do it, and then they will love you. And
so it's a blessing and a curse, is your point.
It is a blessing and a curse because you are there at the bitter end, and you end up doing so the reason I'm jealous is that you hand it off to other people and they butcher it and you're like, oh. But if you're there, you're the one butchering it. Like, you have to do the butchering of your baby.
So you're the only one to blame
yes.
at the end of the day.
Yes. And you're the one who's like, this is the only...
You can't say, well, it was that other guy that screwed it up.
Yep, you can't blame...
She was there till the end.
I was there. That was my
So what
fault.
is number 10? I've been dying to know.
9 is who's driving.
9?
And that's just authorial intent, which we can have a whole nother conversation about, because the writer's job in traditional things is, I'm trying to get my vision across to you, right? And in games, the player is in charge. So it's not about your story. It's just not. Get over your ego. It's about the player's story and the player's experience. And so your authorial intent doesn't matter, because you've got to have a fun experience for your player. And number 10.
Ooh, drum roll.
Dun, dun, dun. Is one that, people who've worked in film especially appreciate, and television appreciate. It's called We'll Fix It In.
We'll fix it in post.
He knows the answer. Yes, we'll fix it in post, which was always fun. Because occasionally, something would come up when I was working with television. I'd be like, oh my gosh, you just called Taiwan Taipei. And they would say, we'll fix it in post. And magically they would. I'm like, wow, that was amazing. The magic of editing and, fixing the lines at the last
ADR,
second.
whatever.
Yeah,
Cut
amazing
early,
stuff. Yeah.
Change the dialogue,
you
do
just
something.
switch whose
switch
point
the
of
camera,
view you're looking
that's
at.
Right. Have it dubbed over.
That's right. So
We've got 100 things we can do.
You can fix it in post-production. So in video games, instead, nobody says we'll fix it in post. They all say, without a joke at all in their voices, we'll fix it in story. We will fix it in story, which means, okay, we're 6 months out from launch, and we've discovered that level 7 and level 2 just don't work. And we're spinning our wheels, and it's just, we can't do it. So we're going to cut level 7, and we're going to cut level 2, and we're probably going to cut level 9 as well. Let's just get it out of the way.
So now you got to rewrite the other stuff.
So what you've done as the storyteller is I have key story moments happening in level 2 and level 7 and level 9, and this door that once led, literally I have had this problem where, wait, you're telling me that this door at the end of the level that used to lead to an ice planet, ooh, ice planet, now it leads to hell. What? I can't just transpose yes, that piece of the story was coming later, but I can't.
Man, it's gold in here.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
Right?
there's flames shooting everywhere.
Yes.
Right.
And yet you can't just cut all of that dialogue and use the dialogue that you had in place for that level of, when you did eventually get to hell, because then you're walking into hell going, wow, it's much cooler. It's so nice to be in a warm and, making
Right.
jokes
Have you seen my
about.
sled dogs?
Yes. And you're like, we'll fix it in story. Thanks, guys. Well, now
So
I
what
have
does
to.
happen at that point? That's really interesting to know.
Yes. How do you do that?
What do you do?
There is a chapter in that book.
Oh, we're going to reference the
I'm
book.
going to reference the book.
Okay, so there's a chapter in the
There's
book.
a chapter in the book not written by me, written by Richard Dansky, who has possibly the coolest title in existence ever. He's the head Clancy writer for Ubisoft games. And yeah, if you think about that, that means Clancy's not actually writing any of the video games, but he gets to be the head Clancy writer for all of the Clancy video games. Anyway, what he actually spends most of his time doing is script doctoring, and that's what his chapter is about. So that's where this fits in. That's what we call it at that. The writers, everyone else is saying, oh, we'll fix it in story. Like, I have no idea why now you have a dog instead of a monkey as your sidekick. We have no explanation for that. We'll fix it in story.
It's very similar in film to actually what an editor will sometimes do.
Yes, it's absolutely very close. And at first, like the film editors I know are like, why are you getting to know me? I'm like, I want to know all your tricks,
Right.
man. How do you do it?
It's this first thing came to mind when you were talking about it.
Absolutely.
You go directly to your editor and say,
yeah,
fix the story, is what you say to the editor.
yes.
It's not working. Fix the story.
Yes, and they do their magic, and suddenly it works.
It works.
Yep. So, at some point you have to say, okay, we started out with a monkey as the sidekick, and now we have a dog as the sidekick, and there's it's a jump cut basically between the two. Okay, so either you use the lingo, you hang a lantern on it, and you're like, whoa, when did you turn into a dog, and you fix that little line in there, and it's the dog is just like woof, and you move along. Or, you convince them to be like, okay, can I just have 5 seconds of a little bit of animation where he's transformed into a dog because he tripped over something or, and sometimes you can convince them, especially if you've already made friends with the people in the art department. And this is where all of that team building stuff and collaborative things comes in, where you're fixing it in story with, okay, our villain is trying to mess with your mind, and so he's this monkey that used to be helpful is now just a dog who can't talk to you anymore, and the monkey used to be able to talk to you, so he's, magic spell, making it difficult for you. We're adding to the challenge, and so, hey, I've just fixed it in story.
You know what I'm hearing?
What are you hearing?
You're a writer. That's where you're writing. And that is.
So
it's on your feet writing. It is not sitting down by yourself creating something. It is being an on-the-fly problem solver, cheerleader, ringleader, and
absolutely
using your writing skills to at the end of the project rather than front end loaded. It's at the end. It's very different.
You end up using different skills at different times throughout the project. If you're lucky enough to be brought in at the beginning, it's a lot of pie in the sky stuff, and then you realize, oh, that's not even practical, and you have to make changes.
But
and then at the end,
still seems like it boils down to you still have to know your setting, your characters, your location,
absolutely,
and and then you're reworking it, working it. It's storytelling. It all boils down to story.
Absolutely the same skills that you use in every other form of creative writing.
Well, in a way, in television, if you come in to write a TV show, you're given the setting, the characters, the location, everything about it. So in a way, it seems to me like it could be similar to you're just coming in and doing something different with what has already been created.
Yes.
And you're literally only writing the lines of dialogue in a television show. So It's very similar in a way to TV.
It has those similarities. You're also
in terms
writing,
of its creativity.
yeah, and you're also writing some literally screenplays that are the cutscenes between, where you get to tell a little more story, or it's often used. Cutscenes are often used to help with pacing, because after you get done fighting this really big, important boss, you're actually exhausted as a player, and you want to sit back for a minute and have the sit back experience and watch something happen on the screen. And so you do use your screenwriting skills to write a screenplay that gets animated. And anyway,
It sounds like you're also producing and directing, and in some ways maybe even set designing some of it.
Absolutely, you're working very closely. There's a group of people called level designers who are tasked with actually building the level. But if you have a good relationship with them, you can do something that in the business we are encouraging game writers to do more of, which is called environmental storytelling, where you can get more across without having to say it in dialogue if your environment actually helps you tell the story.
That's correct.
So it's
set design.
Set design, absolutely. And if you communicate with them, they can help tell the story, so you don't have to put as much of it into words, and it just all works together.
For me, suddenly it just all came together.
All right.
I see how it all works together now. So a background in film is great. A background in TV is great. A background in journalism, producing, directing. There's a lot of things. Yep. Even management could be a good asset.
Because a lot of times you want to move up the ranks. You start out as a staff writer or a contractor, but then it would be really nice to be hired on as a lead writer, and then you can make it to the creative director.
Did you hear him? We'll fix it in post.
We'll fix it in post. Yes, so you go
fix
from...
it in story.
Okay,
go ahead, start over.
You go from contractor to staff writer to lead writer to creative director. Thank you. I've had this mental block apparently because I'm...
You don't want to think about those people.
Those are the ones that end up hiring you, so you want to be friends with them, and you never know who among your friends is going to become the first game creative director, and so you got to be friends with everybody. And when you make it to creative director, you have a lot more influence over. I mean, you still may be dictated. This is the market we're going after. It's going to be either 12-year-old boys or 34-year-old women or 25-year-old men, which actually is very similar to 12-year-old boys. But you can add in a little more gore.
So you started, to recap, you
Yes.
started as a journalism major.
I did.
Learned about this new thing called the internet.
Yeah.
Became an expert in it.
Yeah.
Met a lady named Roddenberry who had an idea. You created a game for that idea.
Yep.
And
which was part of a website, television show, alternate
started sort of in
reality game.
TV internet,
Yes.
and then went into the TV reality web show internet game.
Yep.
And so you've been going through the business, and I was just talking to someone about the industry is still in its infancy. I wasn't joking earlier when I said, so in 1996 it was the internet, in 2006 it was your first video game. The book you did was only in 2008, and it seems like a while ago, but in the history of gaming it's fairly short. In the history of film it's 100 years old.
Yes.
The history of gaming is short, the history of game writing, and it's still in its infancy. So where do you see it going in the next few phases as technology develops?
I know. Where do we go from here? What comes next?
Is it going to be a slow process, a quick process?
See, the big sigh is that it's chaos right now, okay? And you can either look at chaos as a huge opportunity, or you can look at it as, oh no, nobody knows what's going on, we're all gonna die, right? Mm-hmm. So in the game industry right now, both of those attitudes are out there. And I personally prefer to work with the people who are like, hey, it's chaos. Anybody can do anything, and it might work, and it would, it might fail, but let's try it and see what happens. And I like those people. Those are the people I hang out with. The ones who are going, I work for a huge company, and they only want to do things that are sure things, and they want to know that the ROI is going to return on investment is going to be
.com business, same
yes.
thing, or any stock you want to buy. There's been trends.
The big companies start to get more and more conservative, and when chaotic times come, they get nervous.
But the box office of gaming is bigger than all of Hollywood. It's insane.
It is.
How can that go away tomorrow?
It's not going away, but it might be very different.